Welcome to the Marine Engineer Officer. In this lecture, we will study the history and evolution of the International Load Line Convention, commonly known as ICLL. The Load Line Convention is one of the most important maritime safety conventions because it controls how deeply a ship can be loaded and ensures that ships maintain sufficient freeboard and reserve buoyancy during their operation. In this video, we will trace the complete development of load line regulations, starting with Lloyd's Rule of 1835, moving through the contribution of Samuel Plimsoll, the first International Load Line Convention of 1930, the 1966 Load Line Convention, and finally the major harmonized amendments up to 2014. Understanding this historical evolution is important for every MEO Class 1 candidate because many oral examination questions are based on the origin, purpose, and development of international load line regulations. So, let's begin with the history of how the load line system evolved. Slide 2. This slide explains the early history of load line regulations. During the early 19th century, there were no international regulations controlling the loading of merchant ships. The freeboard of a vessel was generally decided by individual ship owners, and there was no common standard for determining how deeply a ship could safely load. Due to excessive loading and unsafe operating practices, many ships suffered casualties, resulting in loss of ships, cargo, and human lives. To improve this situation, in 1835, Lloyd's Register introduced a recommendation for freeboard. This recommendation was based on the depth of the hold, using approximately 3 inches of freeboard for every foot of hold depth. This became known as Lloyd's Rule. The timeline shown on this slide highlights the important developments. Early 1800s, no formal regulation existed. 1835, Lloyd's Register introduced freeboard recommendations. 1950s to 1970s, the problem of overloaded and unsafe vessels, known as coffin ships, became a major concern. 1880, Lloyd's Rule continued as the working standard. This was the beginning of the journey toward internationally accepted load line regulations. Slide 3. This slide discusses Samuel Plimsoll and his contribution to ship safety. In 1860, Samuel Plimsoll started his campaign against the dangerous practice of overloading merchant ships. At that time, many ships were loaded beyond safe limits, and a large number of vessels were lost at sea. These unsafe vessels became known as coffin ships because many sailors lost their lives while operating on them. Due to growing public concern, a royal commission was established in 1872 to investigate the issue of unsafe loading practices. The findings eventually led to the Merchant Shipping Act of 1876, which introduced compulsory marking of the load line on ships. This marked an important step in maritime safety because it provided a visible indication of the maximum safe loading limit of a vessel. The famous Plimsoll mark became internationally recognized and remains one of the most important safety markings on merchant ships today. Slide 4. Now let's move to the first International Load Line Convention of 1930, which marked the beginning of internationally accepted load line regulations. Before 1930, different countries followed their own national rules for assigning freeboard. This created inconsistencies in international shipping. To establish uniform safety standards, the first International Load Line Convention was adopted in 1930. The convention was primarily based on the principle of reserve buoyancy. In simple terms, reserve buoyancy is the watertight volume of a ship above the waterline that provides additional buoyant force during heavy weather or flooding. Adequate reserve buoyancy is essential for the survival and safety of the ship. The convention also recognized that assigning freeboard should not depend only on reserve buoyancy. It should also ensure adequate stability when the ship is fully loaded and sufficient longitudinal structural strength to withstand the stresses experienced at sea. Another important feature introduced by the convention was the use of seasonal load line marks, allowing different loading limits based on the weather conditions expected during different seasons in trading areas. Finally, the convention considered water density. Since freshwater is less dense than seawater, a ship floats deeper in freshwater. Therefore, appropriate corrections were incorporated into the load line system. The 1930 convention became the foundation upon which the modern load line convention was later developed. Slide 5. The next major milestone was the adoption of the International Convention on Load Lines 1966, commonly known as ICLL 1966. This convention replaced the 1930 convention and remains the principal international convention governing load lines today. Let's first understand its structure. Annex 1 contains the technical regulations and is divided into 4 chapters. Chapter 1 contains the general provisions. Chapter 2, covering regulations 10 to 26, deals with the conditions of assignment, specifying the structural and operational requirements that must be satisfied before a ship can receive a load line. Chapter 3, covering regulations 27 to 40, explains the method of determining and assigning freeboard. Chapter 4, covering regulations 41 to 45, contains the special requirements for ships assigned timber freeboard. Moving further, Annex 2 defines the load line zones, areas, and seasonal periods, while Annex 3 prescribes the statutory certificates issued under the convention. The 1966 convention introduced revised and internationally standardized freeboard assignment rules, established worldwide load line zones, and became the legal basis for issuing the International Load Line Certificate. Even today, it remains the parent convention governing international load line regulations. Before we continue with the important amendments to the convention, if you're enjoying this lecture and finding it helpful for your MEO Class 1 oral examination, please subscribe to the Marine Engineer Officer and press the bell icon so you never miss our upcoming videos on IMO conventions, marine engineering, ship construction, and oral examination preparation. Your support motivates us to create more high-quality maritime learning content. Slide 6. After the adoption of the 1966 convention, several amendments were introduced to improve the regulations and keep them up to date with the changing needs of the shipping industry. The first amendment came in 1971, which mainly clarified the wording of several regulations and revised the load line zone charts to improve their interpretation. In 1975, an important procedural change was introduced through the tacit acceptance procedure. Under this system, future amendments would automatically enter into force after a specified period unless a sufficient number of contracting governments objected. This significantly accelerated the implementation of safety improvements. The 1979 amendment altered the load line zone boundaries off the coast of Australia, ensuring that the assigned load lines more accurately reflected local weather and sea conditions. Finally, the 1983 amendment extended the summer and tropical areas south of Chile, again updating the seasonal zones to better match actual climatic conditions. These amendments demonstrate that the convention has continuously evolved to enhance maritime safety while adapting to operational experience and environmental changes. Slide 7. Now let's discuss one of the most significant developments in the history of the Load Line Convention, the 1988 Protocol.
The Protocol of 1988 was adopted on 11 November 1988 and entered into force on 3 February 2000. The primary purpose of this protocol was to harmonize the survey and certification requirements of the Load Line Convention with other major IMO conventions through the Harmonized System of Survey and Certification, commonly known as HSSC. Before the introduction of HSSC, different IMO conventions had different survey schedules and certificate expiry dates. As a result, ships often had to undergo multiple surveys at different times throughout the year. To simplify this process, HSSC aligned the survey intervals and certificate validity periods, allowing several statutory surveys to be carried out together. This reduced administrative burden while maintaining a high standard of maritime safety. The protocol also incorporated the tacit acceptance procedure, enabling future amendments to enter into force more efficiently unless they were formally rejected by the required number of contracting governments. Today, the 1988 Protocol remains an important milestone because it standardized statutory surveys and certification procedures across various IMO conventions. Slide 8. Let's now move to the 2003 amendment, which introduced one of the most comprehensive technical revisions to the Load Line Convention. Before this amendment, there had been an amendment cycle in 1995, but it was later superseded by the work completed in 2003. The 2003 amendment was adopted by the IMO in June 2003 and entered into force on 1 January 2005. Its main objective was to introduce a comprehensive revision of the technical regulations contained in Annex B of the Convention. These revisions improved the technical requirements for load line assignment and ensured greater consistency with modern ship design, construction, standards, and survey practices. It is also important to remember that these revised technical regulations apply to ships flying the flag of states that are parties to the 1988 Protocol. For MEO Class 1 oral examinations, you should remember 3 key facts. Adopted in June 2003, entered into force on 1 January 2005, introduced a comprehensive revision of the technical regulations.
Slide 9. Finally, let's look at the latest amendments to the International Load Line Convention. In 2008, editorial amendments were introduced to improve the clarity and consistency of the convention text. These changes were editorial in nature and did not significantly alter the technical requirements. The next major revision came in 2013 through IMO Resolution A1082/28, which modified the seasonal load line zones to better reflect prevailing climatic conditions. This was followed by the 2014 amendment adopted through IMO Resolution MSC 329/90, which enlarged the summer zone south of South African waters. This amendment ensured that the load line zones more accurately represented the weather conditions experienced by ships operating in that region. With these amendments, we can see that the International Load Line Convention has continuously evolved over the years to improve maritime safety, standardize international practices, and respond to changing operational experience and environmental conditions. That brings us to the end of today's lecture. I hope this video has helped you understand the complete history and evolution of the International Load Line Convention in a clear and systematic manner. If you found this lecture useful, please like the video, share it with your fellow seafarers, and leave your questions in the comments section. I regularly create videos on MEO Class 1 oral examination, IMO conventions, ship construction, marine engineering, and other important maritime topics. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next lecture. Until then, stay safe, keep learning, and all the very best for your MEO Class 1 oral examination.